At 5:42 in the morning, while the real test center's glass doors opened across the street from my hotel, my best friend was standing in a different city, under a different sign, screaming my name into a phone I had finally learned not to answer. I could see the official testing building from my 7th floor window. Meridian Assessment Center, pale stone, blue banners, 2 security guards unfolding crowd control ropes while rainwater shone on the pavement like polished steel. My admission ticket lay on the desk inside a clear sleeve. My passport sat beside it. My pencils were sharpened, my calculator approved, my snacks sealed in a transparent bag exactly as the instructions demanded. I had checked into the hotel alone the night before, walked the route twice, photographed the entrance, confirmed the candidate gate with security, and slept 8 hours for the first time before a major exam in my life. On my phone, Morel's messages stacked over one another like a collapsing building. Miri, Alina, where are you? Miri, the driver says there's no Meridian Assessment Center here. Miri, is it called Meridian Hall? Miri, why is the address taking us to another province? Miri, pick up. This isn't funny. Behind her messages came the class chat, full of panic from the students who had trusted her better itinerary because it had cheaper rooms, prettier cafes, and a riverfront view she said would calm everyone's nerves. They were in North Marrow, 3 hours away. The exam was in Marrow Gate. In my first life, that difference had cost me everything because I spent the morning untangling it for them. In this life, I adjusted the collar of my blouse, zipped my document pouch, and watched Miri's live location pulse in the wrong city until it stopped moving in front of the wrong building. Then I turned my phone face down, picked up my bag, and left for the test center across the street. The first time I lived that day, I did not check in alone. I did what I always did. I became the hinge holding everyone else's future together and then acted surprised when the door slammed on my fingers. The Meridian National Clinical Scholarship Exam was the test that decided whether students like me could enter the accelerated medical pathway without drowning our families in debt. It was not just multiple choice. It was document verification, situational judgment, biological sciences, a written ethics response, and a live mini-interview. Missed the morning check-in and you were marked absent. Arrived distressed, undocumented, or late, and the interview panel recorded it under readiness and professionalism. I had studied for 9 months. I knew every rule, every route, every allowable pen, every hotel within walking distance, every bus schedule, every backup train. Miri knew that too. Everyone did. That was why she smiled at me 2 weeks before the exam, dropped her head on my shoulder in the cafeteria, and said, "Bestie, you're basically our travel wife. Just tell us where to sleep and when to breathe." The table laughed. I laughed too, because in my first life I had not yet learned that jokes often reveal the contract people expect you to sign. I booked 6 rooms at the correct hotel beside the test center, emailed everyone the address, printed transport maps, and warned them not to confuse Marrow Gate with North Marrow, a prettier city on the river that search engines loved to show first. Miri wrinkled her nose at the hotel photos. "This place looks like a tax office with pillows," she said. "I found a boutique hostel called the Lantern House. It says Marrow in the name, and it's half the price." I told her it was in North Marrow. I showed the map. I circled the correct address in red. She waved one manicured hand and said, "Alina, you stress so hard you make geography sound like war." Everyone laughed again. That laugh followed me for years. The mistake did not become fatal until Miri made it pretty. She posted a pastel itinerary in the class chat with cafe recommendations, aesthetic packing tips, and a screenshot from a travel app that showed Marrow Region, as if a region and a city were interchangeable. She titled it Scholarship Girls Calm Exam Weekend, even though half the people going were boys and nothing about an 8-hour medical scholarship exam was calm. When I objected, she changed the subject to how anxious I sounded. "We love you, Ollie, but you catastrophize," she wrote, and the class responded with hearts because nobody wants the map when the wrong direction comes with a filter. By the evening before the exam in my first life, I was exhausted from arguing, so I compromised. I went with them to North Marrow because Miri insisted we should stay together, and because I was afraid that if I checked in near the test center alone, they would call me selfish. At 10:40 p.m., after a dinner I could not eat because my stomach knew what my heart refused to accept, the hostel receptionist mentioned casually that the Meridian Assessment Center was probably in Marrow Gate, not here. The room went silent. Phones came out. Maps loaded. Faces drained. Miri looked at me first, not because she was sorry, but because she expected me to become a solution before anyone blamed her. I did. I found a private van willing to leave at 3:30 a.m. I paid the deposit when Miri's car declined. I called the test center's emergency line. I reorganized everyone's documents, laminated 3 blurred admission slips at a 24-hour print shop, and stayed awake while Miri cried into my cardigan about how her parents would kill her if she missed the exam. We reached Marrow Gate late, but not too late for most of them. I was the last one out of the van because I had to argue with the driver about the cash balance. By the time I reached candidate verification, my passport pouch was missing. Miri had borrowed it in the van to check her own ID against mine and then accidentally left it under her seat. I ran back. The gate closed. She entered. I did not. People think betrayal announces itself with a knife. Mine arrived wearing peach lip gloss and shaking hands. In the first life, when I was marked absent from the exam that should have saved my future, Miri stood inside the test center lobby sobbing beautifully to the coordinator. Alina planned everything, she said. She told us North Marrow was okay. She said she had backups. I could hear her through the half-open office door while I held my recovered passport and tried not to vomit. She was not accusing me directly, not yet. She was relocating gravity. By afternoon, the story had settled. I had overcomplicated travel, then panicked, then somehow delayed the group. Miri, who had kept everyone emotionally grounded, managed to sit the exam and scored high enough for the scholarship interview. I received no sitting, no refund, no special consideration because the center had opened on time and the address had been printed clearly. Miri told me privately she was sorry the morning got confusing, then asked if she could borrow my biology summary because she still had the interview stage and it would be tragic if all that sacrifice went nowhere. Sacrifice. She used that word as if I had thrown myself into the river voluntarily. When I refused, she cried to our advisor, Ms. Caro, who told me trauma could make people ungenerous. Miri passed the interview. I lost my scholarship route, took a loan, failed to transfer, worked nights to pay for slower degree, and watched her become the Marrow miracle, the girl who overcame travel chaos with grace. She gave a student leadership talk the next year titled Staying Centered When Plans Collapse. I watched the recording in a library basement and laughed until I tasted blood. My death came 5 years later in a city clinic where I had worked the reception desk after dropping out for the second time. It was not dramatic enough for revenge, which somehow made it crueler. A winter virus moved through the staff. I kept covering shifts because debt collectors do not care if you are feverish. One night, after closing, I sat on the floor behind the counter with patient forms scattered around me and Miri's latest interview playing from someone's phone in the waiting area. She was speaking as a medical student ambassador now, telling an audience, "The lesson from my scholarship exam was that you can't control logistics, only composure." I remember pressing my palm over my mouth because the sound that came out of me was not laughter anymore. Then the room tilted, the fluorescent light stretched, and my chest tightened as if an invisible hand had closed around my ribs. I thought, absurdly, of the hotel I had booked and canceled in Marrow Gate. I thought of its ugly gray curtains and its view of the test center entrance. I thought I should have gone alone. When I woke, my cheek was stuck to a library table, my hair smelled faintly of highlighter ink, and my phone showed the date, 17 days before the Meridian National Clinical Scholarship exam. For several seconds, I stared at the screen without understanding. Then a message appeared in the class chat from Miri. "Bestie Alina is doing the transport plan, right? Nobody panic." She was born holding a clipboard. 27 laughing emojis followed. I laughed too, but quietly, with my hand over my mouth, because this time the joke was on them. Rebirth did not make me brave immediately. That is another lie people tell in stories because they prefer transformation to be cinematic. My first feeling was not courage. It was nausea. I ran to the library bathroom. locked myself in a stall, and shook so violently my knees hit the door. I remembered everything. The wrong city, the van, the passport, the office door, Mary's tears, the years of watching my future worn by someone else like a borrowed coat. I also remembered every choice that had led me there, and the worst part was how kind most of them had looked at the time. Answer the message. Share the spreadsheet. Book the rooms. Change the rooms. Stay together. Fix the mistake. Pay the driver. Find the passport. Forgive the panic. Help with the interview. Each choice small enough to defend. Together, they formed a road away from my own life. When I could stand, I washed my face, returned to the table, and opened the official exam portal. The address was the same. Meridian Assessment Center, 14, Calder Street, Marrow Gate. Under it, in bold text, I had practically memorized in another life. Candidates are responsible for verifying location. Marrow Gate is distinct from North Marrow. No late entry after 7:30 a.m. due to identity and security checks. The warning had always been there. It had not saved me because I had believed being right was less important than being liked. This time, I booked one room at the Dull Hotel across from the test center, paid up front, selected early check-in, and emailed the confirmation to an address Miri did not know existed. Then I made a transport plan for one person. Me. It fit on half a page. I cried when I printed it, not because I was sad, but because the page looked so light. Miri noticed the missing weight almost immediately. She had always been sensitive to changes in my usefulness, the way some people feel storms in old injuries. At lunch the next day, she slid into the seat beside me and hooked her arm through mine. She was beautiful in a bright, friendly way that made teachers forgive her lateness and strangers offer her chargers. Her curls were pinned back with 2 pearl clips, her nails were painted a milky pink, and her smile had the practiced warmth of someone who understood that affection could be a form of access. "Ollie," she sang, "tell me you're not ignoring the travel spreadsheet." I peeled the lid off my yogurt. "I'm not making one." The table went quiet in stages. First Lena stopped chewing, then Dev lowered his sandwich, then Tomas looked up from his phone. Miri laughed because laughter was how she rejected reality before replacing it. "Sorry, what?" "I'm handling my own travel this time." "Okay," dramatic phrasing. She squeezed my arm. "We're all going to the same place. Then everyone can use the official address." "Bestie, don't be weird. You know I get anxious with maps." In my first life, that sentence would have softened me. Miri's anxiety had been the golden ticket she stamped over every border I tried to build. I looked at her hand on my sleeve until she removed it. "The portal has directions." Her smile flickered. "You always say the portal is confusing." "No, I always said people don't read it." Dev made a low sound, almost a laugh, and hid it behind his drink. Miri's cheeks warmed. "Wow. Okay. I didn't realize we were doing Mina Lena today." I could feel the old guilt moving toward me, familiar as a trained dog. I let it come close and then did not feed it. "We're doing responsible Alina," I said. "She travels alone." Miri's first counterattack was mockery, which worked because it did not look like an attack if everyone smiled. For the next week, whenever anyone mentioned the exam, she called me Solo Captain, Madam Passport, or Marrow Gatekeeper. She posted a meme of a woman hugging a suitcase in a bunker and tagged me with 3 hearts. She told Ms. Caro I was setting boundaries, in the tone people use for unstable celebrities. The class laughed because laughter is cheaper than research. Meanwhile, Miri created her own itinerary. She chose the Lantern House again, of course, because some people are so committed to the wrong road that even resurrection cannot improve their map skills. The hostel's listing said Marrow River District, which sounded close if you ignored the address, the province, the travel time, the portal warning, and the fact that Marrow Gate did not have a river. I said nothing. Not because I hid the truth. The truth was printed in the exam instructions, repeated in the school briefing, and pinned to the top of the candidate portal. When Lena asked me quietly after chemistry whether North Marrow and Marrow Gate were different, I said, "Yes. Check the official map." She did and booked her own room near the test center. Tomas overheard and did the same. Dev waited another day, then muttered, "You're really not going with Mary?" I said no. He cursed under his breath and changed his booking too. I did not recruit them. I did not rescue them. I answered direct questions with public facts and let adults in training make adult choices. Mary noticed the defections by Friday. Her itinerary group dropped from 18 to 11. She cornered me near the stairs, still smiling but with her eyes too sharp. "You're scaring people." They checked the address. "Because you're making a whole performance of not helping."
No.
"You're making a performance of needing help." For a second, the hallway lost sound. Then she tilted her head and said softly, "Careful, Ollie. People don't like girls who punish their friends for being imperfect." The old me would have argued. The new me walked around her. Her second counterattack was sweetness. Sweetness was more dangerous because it wore the face of our history. Mary and I had been friends since second year, when she sat beside me during a biology lab and whispered that the preserved frog looked like it knew our secrets. I laughed so hard the instructor separated us. She remembered my birthday, decorated my locker, braided my hair before debate rounds, and once walked 20 minutes in the rain to bring me soup when I had the flu. Those memories were real. That was what made the betrayal hard to explain. People prefer villains who are never kind because then victims look less foolish for loving them. Mary was kind when kindness cost little and returned loyalty. She was affectionate, funny, generous with compliments, and utterly unwilling to let my needs survive contact with hers. 3 days before the exam, she came to my house carrying my favorite honey cake from the bakery near school. My mother adored her and called her your sunshine friend. Mary sat at our kitchen table, eyes wide and wet, and waited until my mother left before reaching across the table. "Ollie, I hate this," she whispered. "I feel like I'm losing you over a stupid hotel." I looked at the cake between us. In my first life, I had eaten it while she cried, then promised we would travel together. "You're not losing me over a hotel." Her face softened with relief too early. "Then come with us. Please. I know you think North Marrow is wrong, but the hostel staff said people go to Marrowgate all the time, and I booked a sunrise car. It'll be fine if you're there."
There.
Not because she wanted me beside her, but because my presence converted risk into shared responsibility. I pushed the cake back toward her. "I already checked in online at my hotel." She froze. "What hotel?" "Near the test center." "You booked without me?" "Yes." Her eyes filled. Fast and perfect. "I told everyone we'd be together." "You shouldn't have." The tears did not fall. They hardened. "You're humiliating me." That was the first honest sentence she had spoken all week. The night before the exam, I traveled to Marrowgate alone by train with my bag on my lap and my documents under my jacket like a second heartbeat. The journey took 2 hours. In my first life, that train would have felt lonely and cruel. This time, the loneliness had edges but no teeth. I watched suburbs thin into fields, fields become industrial lots, then the gray towers of Marrowgate rise under a low winter sky. The city was not pretty. It was practical. Hospitals, testing centers, government buildings, cafes that closed early because nobody came there for romance.
Perfect.
My hotel stood exactly where the map said it would, across from the Meridian Assessment Center and next to a pharmacy with exam day signage in the window. The receptionist checked my ID, gave me room 712, and said, "Here for the Meridian exam? Candidate entrance opens at 6. Don't go to the conference wing. It's for staff only." I nearly cried at the beauty of useful information given without emotional debt. Upstairs, the room smelled of clean sheets and air conditioning. The curtains were ugly gray. The desk lamp buzzed faintly. The view showed the test center entrance, so clearly I could read the sign. I took a photo, uploaded it to my backup folder, then walked the route twice. Hotel lobby, crosswalk, side gate, security checkpoint, candidate line. For minutes at normal pace. 7 if nervous. I bought dinner from the pharmacy cafe, ate alone, ironed my blouse, arranged my documents, set 3 alarms, and blocked incoming calls from everyone except my parents until after the exam. At 9:14 p.m., the class chat filled with photos from North Marrow, Fairy lights at the lantern house. Mary holding a hot chocolate by the river. 11 classmates making peace signs under a sign that read "Welcome to North Marrow Old Town." Her caption, "Calm before excellence." Some people travel with fear. We travel with faith. I looked out my window at the real test center and whispered, "Good luck with faith." The first message slipped through at 4:58 a.m. because Mary used her mother's phone. "Alina, call me. The driver says he can't guarantee arrival." I was already awake, dressed, and drinking vending machine coffee that tasted like punishment but worked like medicine. I did not reply. At 5:11, Dev messaged me privately from his hotel 2 streets over. "You up?" I answered, "Yes." Leaving at 6:05. He sent a thumbs up. That was the entire exchange. Healthy dependence is small. At 5:26, Mary's group chat began to fracture. "Why does Maps say 2 hours 47? Mary, you said 50 minutes. The driver is asking for extra cash. Is this the wrong meridian? Guys, don't panic." Mary wrote, "There are multiple routes. App is glitching." I brushed my teeth. At 5:42, while the test center doors opened across the street, Mary called from her own number. My phone, set to allow repeated emergency calls, lit up on the desk. I watched her name flash until it stopped. Then came the messages that would have dragged the old me into the current like a drowning hand. "Where are you? Are you already there? Can you ask them if there's a grace period? Can you tell security our bus is coming? Can you send your hotel address? Alina, please, I'm scared." I stood by the window and saw the first candidates lining up below, calm and early, documents in clear folders. In another life, I had been in a van with her, cold sweat under my blazer, inventing miracles for people who would later call my panic the problem. This time, I typed one message. "The official address is on your admission ticket. Candidate check-in closes at 7:30. I sent it, then turned off message previews. Checking in alone felt almost obscene in its simplicity. I crossed the street under a pale morning sky, joined the candidate line, showed my passport, scanned my admission ticket, signed the security form, placed my bag in the storage area, and received a wristband with my candidate number. No one asked where my friends were. No one needed my route explanation. No one blamed me for a city I had not chosen. The security officer glanced at my clear document sleeve and said, "Well prepared." 2 words. That was all. My knees nearly weakened from the kindness of a world where preparation could belong to me. Inside the waiting hall, candidates sat in rows beneath fluorescent lights, murmuring formulas and anatomy mnemonics. Lena waved from the far side, pale but present. Tomas was asleep sitting upright, which seemed dangerous, but at least geographically correct. Dev lifted his coffee in salute. I sat alone by a pillar and took out my permitted review card. At 6:17, an announcement reminded us phones would be sealed at 6:45. I looked one last time. Mary's live location showed her group still in North Marrow, moving in circles around the riverfront. Search queries flashed as screenshots from classmates. Meridian Assessment Center, North Marrow. Meridian Hall exam entrance. Calder Street, North Marrow. Does North Marrow have a Calder Street? They were not even on the road yet. They were searching the wrong city for a building that had never existed. A strange feeling opened in me. Not joy, not pity, something colder and cleaner. The sensation of watching consequences finally read the address correctly. At 6:34, Mary called again, and against my own rules, I answered. Not because I intended to save her. Because some part of me wanted to hear whether she would tell the truth before the gate closed. The background was chaos. Engine noise, someone crying, a driver speaking sharply, rain beginning against glass. "Alina," she gasped. "Thank God. Where exactly are you?" "Inside the Meridian Assessment Center." Silence, then a sharp inhale. "You're inside?" "Yes." "Send me the address." "It's on your admission ticket." "Don't do this right now." There it was, the old command hidden under fear. "Mary, the address has been available for months." I know, but the app kept showing North Marrow because of the hostel, and everyone followed my booking, and now the driver says Marrow Gate is 2 hours away. Can you talk to the coordinator? Tell them our group got sent to the wrong city. Sent. She had a genius for passive verbs. Who sent you? Another silence. Shorter. Angrier. This is not the moment for blame. I agree. Then help. My pulse beat in my throat. I looked at the sealed doors, the candidate signs, the security desk where staff were checking IDs, not feelings. I can't move the test center. You can explain that it was a group mistake. It was your itinerary. Her voice cracked. So you're going to punish me? I closed my eyes. In my first life, those words would have opened every lock inside me.
No.
I'm going to take my exam. The line went quiet except for the rain and distant crying. Then Miri whispered, You're not my friend. I thought of the van, the passport, the hearing that never happened because I had been too ashamed to file one, the years of watching her wear composure bought with my future. Maybe I was never your friend, I said softly. Maybe I was your emergency plan. I ended the call before she could answer and handed my phone to the sealing officer. The exam began at 8 o'clock, long after check-in closed, long after Miri's group realized no appeal could teleport them across provincial lines. The first section was biological sciences. I knew the content so well that for 20 minutes my body forgot revenge and lived inside knowledge, which was better. Cell signaling, renal clearance, embryonic development, endocrine feedback. Questions I had studied instead of rewriting travel plans for people old enough to read addresses. The second section tested clinical reasoning under pressure. A patient with chest pain and atypical presentation. A triage conflict. An elderly woman refusing treatment. In the first life, I had prepared for these cases and never sat them. This time, each answer felt like reclaiming a room in a house I had been locked out of. During the ethics essay, the prompt asked candidates to discuss responsibility when a team fails due to a preventable planning error. For a second, my pen hovered over the page. If the universe had a face, I would have slapped it. Then I wrote about distributed responsibility, role clarity, documentation, and the difference between compassion and substitution. I wrote that support should not erase accountability, and that rescuing a team from preventable failure without addressing the cause may preserve the immediate outcome while deepening long-term incompetence. I did not write Miri's name. I did not need to. By the live interview, I was tired but steady. The interviewer, a woman with silver glasses, asked, Tell us about a time you had to make a difficult, independent decision. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, This morning, I chose to follow my verified plan even when people I cared about wanted me to abandon it. Her pen paused. And how do you feel about that choice? Sad, I said, because I was done lying to make strength look painless, but clear. When candidates were released after noon, the lobby smelled of coffee, wet coats, and adrenaline. Some students cried from relief. Some compared answers despite being told not to. Lena hugged me awkwardly, then apologized because she remembered I did not like sudden contact. Dev said that ethics essay was personally rude, and Tomas, still half asleep, muttered, I think I wrote a confession to public transport. For a few minutes, I felt almost normal. Then I unsealed my phone. It loaded 83 messages. The first wave was panic. The second was accusation. The third was narrative construction. Miri had already begun. In the class chat, she wrote, We were misled by conflicting location information, and some people who knew more chose not to clarify until it was too late. Belle, who had gone with her, wrote, Alina was at the right place and didn't tell us the hostel was wrong. Tomas replied before I could. She literally told people to check official map. Some of us did. Lena added, The portal says Marrow Gate in bold. Dev wrote, North Marrow and Marrow Gate are not the same city. That's not secret information. The chat exploded. Miri called me 7 times. I did not answer. Then Ms. Caro messaged, Alina, please come to the school satellite office beside the center before leaving. There are concerns about the travel situation. Of course there were. In the first life, I had avoided authority because I feared sounding dramatic. This time, I walked to the satellite office with my document pouch still in hand and my spine straight enough to hurt. If they wanted concerns, I had receipts. The satellite office occupied a rented classroom in the building next to the test center, set up for candidates from our school. Ms. Caro was there with Mrs. Venn from administration, two drenched students who had somehow arrived after the gate closed and been denied entry, and a video call open on a laptop showing Miri in a taxi, face pale, hair damp, eyes swollen. Even through a screen, she knew how to be the center. Alina, Miss Caro began, voice full of that careful adult disappointment I remembered too well. Several students are saying there was confusion about the test location and that you may have had information that would have helped the group. I placed my folder on the table. I'm happy to clarify. Miri's face tightened on the screen. She had expected guilt, maybe tears, not the sound of a folder opening. Mrs. Venn, whom I had always liked because she trusted paper more than atmosphere, leaned forward. Please do. I showed the official admission ticket with the Marrow Gate address, the portal warning distinguishing it from North Marrow, my message from a week earlier telling the group to use the official address, my private exchange with Lena where I answered that the cities were different, and my single morning message to Miri stating that check-in closed at 7:30. Then I showed Miri's pastel itinerary, saved before she could delete it, listing the Lantern House in North Marrow as exam weekend base, with her note, "Ignore Alina's scary route obsession. I confirmed this is in the Marrow region." Ms. Caro's mouth slowly changed shape. Miri whispered through the laptop. That was a joke. It became 11 people's travel plan, Mrs. Venn said. Belle, sitting in the corner, began crying harder. Miri looked at me, and for the first time that day, fear displaced performance. You saved that. Yes. Why? I met her eyes through the screen. Because last time I didn't. No one understood the last time, of course. They thought I meant the last argument, the last warning, the last group project. That was fine. Let them keep the small version. Mrs. Venn asked the practical questions. Who booked the hostel? Miri. Who told students it was close enough? Miri. Who advised using the official address? The exam portal, the school briefing, and when asked me, was I assigned as travel coordinator?
No.
Did the school appoint Miri? Not officially, but she had submitted the group accommodation list to Ms. Caro as monitor for exam weekend well-being, a title she invented because it sounded responsible until responsibility arrived. Ms. Caro looked as if she wanted to disappear into her scarf. The students who missed check-in could apply for extraordinary consideration, Mrs. Venn explained, but wrong city accommodation after clear published warnings would be difficult to excuse. Miri began crying then. Not the delicate tears from my kitchen. These were frightened, angry tears.
So, that's it?
My future is gone because of one map mistake. Mrs. Venn did not soften. Your future is not gone. But this sitting is closed, and your appeal will need to address your own planning choices. Miri turned to me. Say something. The room tilted. In my first life, she had said those same words in the van when the driver demanded more cash. Say something. Translate my mistake into your responsibility. I folded my hands. I hope your appeal is honest. Her tears stopped as if cut. Honest. Yes. She laughed once, ugly and small. You planned this. I planned to arrive. You wanted me to be wrong.
No, Miri.
I wanted you to read. That sentence became the one everyone repeated, which was unfortunate because I said many more mature things that day.
But schools love a sharp line.
By evening, the group chat had split into factions. Those who missed the exam and needed Miri's version to be true, those who arrived because they checked the address and therefore resented being nearly dragged into the wrong city, and those who had not sat the exam but enjoyed disaster as entertainment. Miri posted a long statement about friendship, abandonment, and how withholding clarity can be its own kind of sabotage. I did not respond publicly. Mrs. Venn had already opened a formal review because school-affiliated accommodation advice had been circulated under the appearance of class organization. I went back to my hotel, took off my shoes, and sat on the bed looking at the test center across the street. The day was over. I had sat the exam. That simple fact should have made me triumphant, but instead I felt hollowed out. Talia, my cousin, called from home and asked how it went. I told her I arrived on time. She screamed so loudly, I had to move the phone from my ear. And the fake bestie? She asked. Talia had never liked Mary. She once said Mary hugged like someone checking pockets.
Wrong city, I said.
Talia went silent for one beat, then whispered, Iconic. I laughed despite myself, then cried without warning. Talia heard the change and softened.
Hey.
You're allowed to be sad even if she deserved the map. That was the first time anyone gave me permission to feel grief without surrendering the boundary. I slept that night with the curtains open, the test center sign glowing across the street like proof. The results were not immediate, so the aftermath had room to rot. Mary returned to school 3 days later wearing sunglasses indoors and tragedy like perfume. She had always understood entrances. The missed exam group moved around her like injured satellites, each needing her to remain innocent because otherwise they had to admit they followed a girl with a pretty itinerary into the wrong city. Belle glared at me in biology. Aaron muttered snake when I passed. But the students who arrived near the test center watched them with a different kind of discomfort. Geography had created evidence. You could not both claim the address was unknowable and explain why some of us found it by reading. Ms. Caro tried to hold a restorative circle, which I declined unless Mrs. Venn attended, and the topic stayed factual. The circle did not happen. Instead, Mrs. Venn interviewed everyone separately. During my interview, she asked, Why did you not make a general announcement correcting the North Marrow plan? I answered honestly, because I had done that in another situation and became responsible for forcing people to listen. The official information was available. I answered anyone who asked me directly. She looked at me for a long time. That is a careful answer. It's the most careful one I have. Do you regret not warning them more forcefully? There it was, the question that had followed me across death. I looked out the office window at students crossing the courtyard, laughing under a pale sky as if futures did not hang from small decisions. I regret that force is sometimes the only thing people respect from girls they later punish for being forceful. Mrs. Venn wrote that down. I did not know whether it helped my case. I knew it was true. Mary's version began to collapse when the hostel sent its confirmation records. She had emailed the Lantern House 3 times asking whether it was close to the Meridian Exam Center, and the receptionist had replied twice that they were in North Marrow and could not confirm travel time to Marrow Gate. Mary had forwarded none of those replies to the group. Instead, she posted, Hostel confirmed Marrow location. When Mrs. Venn showed her the emails, Mary said she misunderstood. When asked why she told everyone I was overreacting about the city difference, she said she wanted to reduce anxiety. When asked why she used my name in the itinerary, she said people trusted my planning and she assumed I would correct anything truly dangerous. There it was in official language. She had relied on my unpaid invisible labor so completely that even her wrong plan counted on me to repair it. Ms. Caro cried after that interview, or so Lena told me, because adults feel very sad when consequences reveal what they encouraged by calling it friendship. Mary received a formal conduct warning for misleading classmates under a school-related event, though the school stopped short of harsher discipline because she had not been officially appointed travel coordinator. Her appeal for a makeup exam was denied. Belle's was denied too. 2 students with documented independent transport failures received resit consideration, but the wrong city hostel group did not. Mary's parents came to school. Her mother shouted in the administration building. Her father requested my messages. Mrs. Venn refused to release anything beyond the formal report. For once, the system's love of paperwork protected me. There was one more detail from the first life that I had almost forgotten until the review dragged it into the light. Mary had never merely made a mistake and panicked after it. She had prepared a cushion for herself before anyone knew there would be a fall. In the old timeline, the night we discovered the Lantern House was in North Marrow, she had said, but Alina checked it too, so softly that it sounded like confusion instead of strategy. I was too busy calling Vans to challenge her. In the second timeline, Mrs. Venn requested the full chat export from the accommodation group, and there it was again, the seed planted early. 3 days before travel, Mary had written, Alina hasn't objected to the final plan, so I think we're good. At the time, I had not even been in that accommodation thread because she created it after I refused to organize travel. My absence had been translated into approval. When Mrs. Venn asked her about it, Mary said, "I assumed if it were really wrong, Alina would say something." That sentence traveled through the review like a dark bird. It sounded small, but to me it explained every year of our friendship. Mary's trust in me was not respect. It was insurance. She trusted that I would prevent disaster before it touched her, and if I failed to prevent it, she trusted that my known reliability would make me partly responsible for not stopping her sooner. Mrs. Venn's report used a phrase I underlined 3 times when I received the summary: inappropriate transfer of duty. I had lived inside that phrase for years without having language for it. An inappropriate transfer of duty was when Mary forgot a deadline and I stayed up formatting her submission. It was when she volunteered us for open day and I wrote the entire booth script. It was when she told teachers, "Alina has the details," before I agreed to hold them. It was when a friend turned your competence into a public resource and your refusal into a public betrayal. The school tried to keep the review quiet, but quiet never survives students with phones. A screenshot of Mary's North Marrow itinerary spread first. Then someone posted a side-by-side image. On the left, the exam portal warning in bold. On the right, Mary's caption, "We travel with faith." The caption became a joke almost instantly. I hated that. Not because I wanted to protect her reputation, but because mockery is lazy truth. It lets people laugh instead of examining why they followed her. Belle cried in the bathroom after someone taped a fake map to her locker. Aaron punched a locker and blamed me for starting a witch hunt, though I had posted nothing. Dev, who had a dangerous tolerance for confrontation, told him, "The witch had an address. You ignored it." That earned him a detention and my reluctant admiration. Mary stopped coming to lunch. Ms. Caro made an announcement about digital cruelty, responsibility, and compassion. Everyone nodded solemnly, then continued exactly as before in smaller chats. I kept my head down, studied for the possible interview stage, and learned another unpleasant lesson. Even when the truth favors you, the crowd can still make you dirty by celebrating it badly. I did not want Mary destroyed by memes. I wanted the structure exposed. I wanted students to understand that charm is not evidence, that group confidence is not verification, that a pretty itinerary can be a weapon if everyone agrees to stop reading. But schools prefer characters to structures. They wanted a villain, a victim, a savage line behind the science block. They wanted me to become the cold girl who watched her bestie wander the wrong city. Maybe I was. But I was also the girl who had said the correct city aloud and then refused to sacrifice her exam when nobody cared enough to listen. The hardest conversation after the review was not with Mary. It was with my mother. She had loved Mary in the uncomplicated way mothers sometimes love the friend who makes their serious daughter laugh. For years, she had sent extra food for her, asked if she was sleeping enough, and told me not to be too strict when Mary arrived late because sunny girls move by weather, not clocks. When the school report reached families, my mother read it in the kitchen with her reading glasses low on her nose and went very quiet. I expected anger at Mary, or maybe anger at me for not telling her sooner. Instead, she folded the paper and said, "How many times did I tell you to help her, because you were better at these things?" That question undid me. I sat across from her and suddenly felt 12 years old, carrying 2 school bags because Mary forgot hers after drama practice. "A lot," I said. My mother covered her mouth. "I thought I was teaching you kindness." "You were." "No," her voice broke. "I was teaching you to make your strength convenient." I had no defense against her grief because she was not centering herself. She was identifying a wound she had helped name as virtue. She reached across the table, not grabbing, just offering her hand. I took it. "I should have noticed when you were always the one with the plan," she said. "You were proud of me." Yes, and I still am. But pride can become permission if a parent is not careful. We sat there while the kettle clicked off behind us. In the first life, my family blamed bad luck, then my burnout, then the cost of trying again. They never knew the shape of the first wrong turn. In this life, my mother knew enough to change one thing at home. She stopped praising me for being useful. The next morning, when I packed my interview materials, she did not ask whether anyone else needed copies. She only asked, "Do you have what you need?" It sounded small. It was enormous. Mary's mother came to our house once during the review, and that visit nearly cracked the new piece in half. She arrived without calling, wearing a wool coat and the kind of perfume that made the hallway feel expensive. My mother let her in because refusing parents at the door was not how our neighborhood worked. I came downstairs to find Mrs. Kane at the kitchen table, a cup of untouched tea before her, saying, "The girls have been inseparable for years. Surely Alina can explain that Morel was not malicious." My mother's face was polite in a way that frightened me. "Alina has already given her statement." Mrs. Kane turned to me, with wet eyes that looked rehearsed by bloodline. "Sweetheart, Miri is devastated. She says you know she would never intentionally hurt you. In my first life, adults use sweetheart like a sedative. This time, I remained standing. Intentional or not, she circulated a wrong plan and used my name to support it. She trusted you," Mrs. Kane said. "She trusted you to speak up if there was danger. She told people not to listen when I did. She's young. So am I." The room went still. My mother looked at me then, and I saw something fierce bloom under her sadness. Mrs. Kane blinked, as if she had never considered that youth applied to daughters other than her own. "One exam should not ruin a girl," she said. "It almost ruined mine," my mother replied. Her voice was calm, but I had never heard anything more final. Mrs. Kane left 5 minutes later, tea untouched, apology unoffered. After the door closed, my mother leaned against it and whispered a word she would have scolded me for using. Then we both laughed, not because it was funny, but because sometimes laughter is the only way a household releases a curse. The interview preparation period was where I felt the strongest temptation to relapse. Not travel logistics this time, but emotional logistics. Mary's group, now denied the sitting, no longer needed maps. They needed comfort, blame management, statements, alternative pathways, next cycle deadlines, advice on explaining the absence to parents, and study plans for resits. People came to me indirectly at first. Belle asked Lena to ask me whether the exam board ever allowed compassionate rescheduling. Aaron wanted Dev to find out if I knew appeal wording. Mary sent nothing for a week, then one message at midnight. "Do you remember the foundation interview questions from the practice pack?" I stared at it in bed, heart thudding with the absurdity. She had missed the exam, been denied appeal, accused me publicly, and still some part of her reached for my notes because needing me was the oldest road in her mind. I did not answer until morning. "The practice pack is on the school portal," she replied. "I know. I meant your version." I put the phone down and walked around my room once, breathing through rage that felt ancient. My version, my route, my hotel, my address, my version. In the first life, after my absence mark, she had asked for my biology summary because it would be tragic to waste the group's sacrifice. In this life, she had not yet learned that a locked gate could also be a teacher. I typed, "My materials are not available." She read it. No reply. That silence felt better than any argument. The strangest consequence of the wrong city disaster was that younger students started treating me like a myth, while my own year treated me like a moral problem. A year 10 girl stopped me outside the library and asked if it was true I had predicted a fake city. I told her no, cities were not predictions. A boy in year 11 asked if he should book accommodation for a debate competition based on the venue website or the team captain's group chat. I said, perhaps too sharply, venue website. Mrs. Venn eventually asked me to help draft a one-page checklist for external exams. I almost refused on principle, but then I read the first line of her draft. "Do not rely on another student to verify your location." It was so beautifully blunt that I agreed. We made the checklist together. Official address, city and suburb confirmed, candidate gate identified, accommodation distance checked by travel time not region name, documents backed up, personal responsibility acknowledged. My name did not appear on it. That was my condition. I did not want to become the school's new logistics mascot. I wanted the system to stop outsourcing common sense to whichever girl had the neatest folder. The checklist went out before winter competitions. Ms. Caro presented it in homeroom, visibly uncomfortable. When she reached the line about not using peer names to validate unverified plans, half the room looked at Miri and the other half looked at me. I looked at the window. Outside, buses moved along the school road in straight, boring lines. I had never appreciated boring more. The day before my scholarship interview, I found an envelope in my locker. For one terrible second, my body remembered every hidden note, every passive-aggressive message, every demand disguised as vulnerability. Then I saw Mrs. Ven's handwriting on the front. Inside was a printed copy of the new external exam checklist and a small sticky note. You are allowed to keep this as evidence that something changed. I stood there in the hallway holding the paper while students pushed past, and the world blurred. In the first life, nothing changed except my prospects. The institution absorbed the story Miri gave it, rewarded the composed girl, and left me to carry the unprovable version. In the second life, the change was not grand. No assembly apology. No dramatic public confession. A checklist. A policy note. A sentence in a handbook telling future students not to treat one classmate as a compass. It should not have felt like justice, but it did a little. Maybe justice often arrives too small because systems fear admitting how large the harm was. I folded the checklist and placed it in my document pouch beside my interview invitation. Then I went to Marrowgate again, not because I needed to prove anything to the city, but because this time the route belonged to me completely. Miri finally confronted me behind the science block, near the old greenhouse where we used to hide during lunch when friendship still felt like shelter. She had been crying, but not prettily. Her face was blotched, her curls tied back badly, pearl clips absent. Without them, she looked younger, almost like the girl who once made frog jokes in biology. For a moment, grief rose so sharply, I nearly stepped toward her. Then she spoke. "Are you happy?" The grief retreated. "No, don't lie. I'm not." She crossed her arms, hands gripping her sleeves. "You got what you wanted. I missed the exam. Everyone thinks I'm stupid or manipulative. My parents won't look at me.
Bella t'aime.
Ms. Caro won't write my recommendation. You think I wanted that? You watched it happen." "Yes." The word struck her. "At least you admit it." I looked at the greenhouse glass, cloudy with old rain stains. "I watched because every time I tried to prevent your mistakes, you turned my prevention into your asset and my panic into my reputation." She stared. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about always being the one who checks, books, prints, calls, pays, explains, apologizes, and then gets called intense when the day is saved." Her mouth tightened. "I never asked you to do all that." The old lie, the cruelest one because it was technically half true. People like Miri rarely ask directly when expectation works better. You asked with helplessness. You asked with jokes. You asked by telling everyone I would handle it before I agreed. You asked by making any refusal proof I didn't love you. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears seemed confused, not strategic. "I did love you." That hurt more than denial. "I know," I said. "That's what made it hard." "Then why didn't love count for anything?" "Because love that only works when I am useful is not love I can survive." She sat on the low brick wall and covered her face. For a while, neither of us spoke. A younger student passed, saw us, and immediately turned around.
Good.
Some conversations deserved no audience. Miri's voice came through her hands. "I really thought it would be fine." "I know. I thought if it wasn't, you'd know what to do." "I know. That sounds terrible when you say it like that." It was terrible before I said it. She lowered her hands. "What happens now?" The question was small, almost childlike. In my first life, now had always meant my next task: fix the plan, save the interview, smooth the friendship, help her parents calm down. This time, now belonged to her. You apply next cycle if you still want it. You tell the truth in your appeal record. You stop making confidence sound like confirmation. You learn to read addresses. A laugh broke out of her, half sob, half disbelief. "You're cruel."
No.
I'm finished being absorbent. She looked at me, then really looked, and I saw the first flicker of understanding, thin and unstable. Is there any way back? To what? Us. The greenhouse smelled of soil and dust and old sunlight. I thought of our frog joke, my mother calling her sunshine, the honey cake, the van, the passport, the phone calls, the wrong city, that pulsing on my screen. Not to what we were. Her face crumpled. Could there be something else? In revenge stories, this is where you say something cold and walk away. In life, even a second one, people are rarely that simple. Maybe someday, I said. If you build a self that doesn't need mine as backup. She nodded, crying silently now. I left before pity could become employment. When scores arrived 6 weeks later, I was in the school library, the same place where I had woken into my second chance. The email subject line appeared at 10:03 a.m., Meridian National Clinical Scholarship Exam Results. My hands went numb. For a moment, memory tried to overwrite reality. I saw the absent mark from my first life. I heard the coordinator saying the gate had closed. I saw Miri on a stage talking about composure. Then Lena, sitting across from me, whispered, "Open it." I did. Biological sciences, 94th percentile. Clinical reasoning, 91st. Ethics essay, distinguished. Interview, outstanding readiness and reflective judgment. Overall, scholarship interview shortlist, rank 3. I did not scream. I did not cry immediately. I just stared until the words lost meaning and became shapes. Lena grabbed my hand, then released it because she remembered, and settled for bouncing in her chair like a caffeinated bird. Dev's message came next. I passed. Not shortlist, but passed. Wrong city survivors can fight me. Tomas sent a photo of himself lying on the floor with the caption, "Geographically correct and academically alive." My mother called before I could call her because the school had notified families.
She cried.
My father said, "I am proud of you," then cleared his throat for so long I started crying too. In the middle of it all, a message from Miri appeared. Just one. I heard, "Congratulations." I looked at it for a long time. There was no heart emoji.
No bestie.
No request. I replied, "Thank you." That was all either of us could carry. The scholarship interview took place in Marrowgate again, because the universe had a sense of humor and apparently a limited location budget. This time, I returned not as a frightened candidate clinging to a second chance, but as someone who had already crossed the street alone and knew the way. I stayed at the same ugly hotel, room 609 instead of 712. The receptionist recognized me and said, "Back again?" I smiled. Correct city and everything. She laughed without knowing the history. The night before the interview, I walked past the test center and stopped at the crosswalk. Across the road, the glass doors reflected the evening sky. I thought about how small the distance was physically, hotel to entrance, for minutes. Then I thought about how enormous it had been in my first life, stretched by loyalty, shame, manipulation, and a wrong city dressed as togetherness. My interview the next morning focused on ethics, resilience, and decision-making. One panelist asked about the incident because it had appeared in my school report as context for independent travel planning. "How did you balance care for peers with responsibility to yourself?" she asked. I answered carefully. I used to think care meant preventing people from experiencing consequences. I now think care can include giving accurate information, refusing to misrepresent risk, and allowing capable people to own their decisions. I cared enough not to lie. I cared for myself enough not to abandon my verified plan. Another panelist asked, "Would you make the same choice again?" I said, "Yes, but I would document earlier and communicate boundaries sooner." That answer felt less like revenge and more like medicine, bitter, measured, meant to heal something without pretending it tasted sweet. I received the scholarship offer on a Thursday afternoon while helping first-year students organize a study room. The email opened with congratulations, and this time the word did not feel stolen. Full tuition support, clinical summer placement, mentorship track, my name, my future, my own route. The first person I told was my mother. The second was Talia. The third was Mrs. Venn, who replied with a single sentence, "Good planning deserved a good destination." Ms. Caro found me later near the staff room and apologized. Properly, to her credit. "I mistook your reliability for availability," she said. "I also allowed Mary to use your reputation as a safety net without asking whether you agreed." I appreciated the sentence because it named the structure, not just the feeling.
"Thank you," I said.
"Please don't do that to the next reliable girl." Her eyes filled. "I won't." Maybe she meant it. Maybe future memos would help. Boring documents again, saving girls one policy at a time. As for Miri, she withdrew from most social events for the rest of term. She studied quietly. She stopped posting itinerary advice. Once, I saw her in the library with an atlas open beside her laptop, tracing routes with a pen. It would have been funny if it were not also sad. Growth often looks ridiculous from the outside because it starts exactly where denial left the person underdeveloped. Near graduation, Miri asked to meet at the cafe between school and the train station, neutral ground with bad muffins and good lighting. I almost said no. Then I went because I trusted myself to leave. She arrived early, which was new, and had already bought my tea, which was old. She pushed it toward me, then caught herself. "You don't have to drink that. I just remembered you like ginger." I did drink it after checking the seal, a small paranoid habit I did not apologize for. She noticed and did not comment. "I reapplied for next year's sitting," she said. "Correct center?" I checked 3 times. A fragile smile.
Merovgata.
Not North Marrow. Not Marrow River District. Not Meridian Hall, which apparently is a wedding venue. Despite myself, I laughed. She looked relieved, then careful. "I'm not asking you to help me prepare." "Good. I wanted to tell you I added a statement to my reapplication about the travel incident. I said I circulated misleading accommodation information and relied on classmates to correct me instead of verifying official instructions. That was more honesty than I expected."
"Why?"
"Because the first draft blamed confusion. Mrs. Venn said confusion is not a plan." That sounded like her. Miri twisted her napkin. "I also wanted to say I'm sorry without making it something you have to fix." The cafe noise seemed to lower around us. I waited. She swallowed. "I'm sorry I made your competence feel like something I owned because we were close. I'm sorry I called you cruel for protecting the exam you worked for. I'm sorry I made other people think your boundaries were betrayal." There it was, not perfect, but specific enough to matter. I looked at the girl who had once been my sunshine friend, my wrong city disaster, my almost destroyer, my old ache. "Thank you," I said. "I'm not ready to be friends." She nodded quickly, eyes wet. "I know, but I hope you pass next year." Her face crumpled in a way that had nothing to do with performance. "Thank you." We drank our tea in peace for 3 minutes. Then I left first because leaving first is a skill I had earned. On graduation day, the school auditorium looked softer than it had any right to. White flowers, blue ribbons, proud parents, teachers pretending not to cry, students hugging people they had gossiped about 2 weeks earlier. My scholarship was announced during the awards section. I walked to the stage under clean applause, not thunderous, not mythic, just real. My mother cried into a tissue. My father recorded the ceiling for 10 seconds before figuring out the camera. Dev cheered too loudly. Lena made a heart with her hands. Miri clapped from 3 rows back. She did not stand. She did not perform. She clapped like someone acknowledging a destination she had not traveled to with me. When I accepted the certificate, I thought of the first life's locked gate, the missing passport pouch, the absent mark that had followed me like a stain. I thought of the second life's hotel window, the test center across the street, the messages from the wrong city, my own feet crossing the road. People later asked whether the scholarship felt like justice. It did not. Justice would have returned the years I lost in the first life. This was something else. This was correction. A route recalculated after a catastrophic wrong turn. Not the same journey, not the same girl, but finally moving toward the right address. After the ceremony, I walked alone to the train station instead of joining the crowd at the restaurant Miri had once chosen for celebrations before everything broke. My heels clicked against the pavement. The late afternoon sun turned the tracks gold. I carried my certificate in a hard folder and my admission documents from the exam, still saved though I no longer needed them because some evidence becomes part of the body. On the platform, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown first year. Hi, Alina. I heard you're good at exam logistics. Do you have any advice for checking test centers? I stared at it and smiled. Not because I wanted to become the travel wife again. Because I finally knew the difference between advice and servitude. I replied, use the official admission ticket, check the city and street, compare it with the testing body's website, book your own route, and do not rely on screenshots from friends. If something matters, verify it yourself. Then I added, good luck.
No spreadsheet.
No hotel list. No emotional contract. The train arrived, silver and loud, and I stepped on alone. The scholarship orientation began with a map, which felt like the universe laughing softly into its hand. 40 students sat in a lecture theater at St. Aurelia Medical College, while the program coordinator projected a campus layout onto the screen and said, please note that the clinical skills building is not the same as the clinical sciences building. Half the room groaned. I wrote the sentence down anyway. A girl beside me, Nadia, glanced at my notebook and smiled. You're thorough. The old me would have said sorry. The new me said, it keeps doors open. During the first break, several students clustered around someone who claimed the afternoon session was across campus near the old hospital. The map said otherwise. I watched the group begin to drift toward confidence without evidence, and something old stirred in me. Not the rescue reflex exactly, but its ghost. Nadia asked, do you know where it is? I pointed to the official schedule. This says Simulation Wing, Level 2, same building. I'm going there. Should we tell them? I looked at the students already following the loud boy with a confident wrong answer. For a second, I saw Miri's Riverfront hostel, the class chat, the van that never arrived in time. Then I stood and said clearly, not pleading, not managing, the official schedule says Simulation Wing, Level 2, same building. The loud boy shrugged. Coordinator said old hospital. She said old hospital placement is next week. He frowned at the paper, then laughed.
Oh.
My bad. The group turned around. That was all. No one called me dramatic. No one made me responsible for getting them snacks, documents, and emotional reassurance. I sat down beside Nadia, who whispered, nice save. I said, nice schedule. It was the first time I understood that helping was not the problem. The problem had been helping inside relationships where truth became obligation and obligation became blame. A month into the program, I received a letter from the Meridian Exam Board. Not an email, a physical letter with the crest stamped in blue. It informed me that, following the incident involving several candidates from my school, the board had updated its candidate admission ticket format. The city name would now appear in larger bold type, and candidates would be required to tick a confirmation box stating they understood the test center might not be in the city, suggested by search engine autofill. Mrs. Venn must have sent them the school report. I sat on my dorm bed, reading the letter with a hand over my mouth, half laughing, half crying. Somewhere in the country, future students would see Marrow Gate printed so loudly, even a pastel itinerary could not smother it. Somewhere, a girl like me might refuse to become a human correction system because the system had finally made the correction itself. I taped the letter inside my wardrobe door. Not because I wanted to remember Miri's humiliation, but because I wanted to remember that my refusal had not ended at refusal. It had forced a paper trail. Paper trails, I had learned, are the footprints of girls who stopped disappearing. Miri passed her next sitting the following year, exactly as her message said, but the story did not end with us rushing back into friendship because life is not that hungry for symmetry. We met once afterward at a bookshop cafe near the station, both older in ways that did not show evenly. She had cut her hair to her shoulders. I had started wearing my documents in a slim leather folder instead of a plastic pouch, which Talia called character development for stationery. Miri told me about studying alone, booking the correct hotel, waking up 3 times during the night to check the address, and crying when she crossed the street into the test center because she finally understood the distance between being helped and being carried. I hated you for months, she admitted, stirring her coffee until the phone collapsed. Then I hated myself, which was worse and less productive. Then Mrs. Venn made me rewrite my appeal reflection without passive verbs. I nearly choked on my tea. Without passive verbs. It was brutal. I had to write I chose. I assumed. I ignored. I circulated. I never realized how much I hid inside sentences where things just happened. That was the most Mrs. Venn punishment imaginable, and perhaps the most effective. Mary looked at me over her cup. I don't expect us to be close again. Good, I said, then softened because honesty did not need to bruise every time. But I'm glad you passed. She nodded. I'm glad you didn't answer the phone that morning. The sentence sat between us, impossible and clean. I believed her. Not fully, not forever, but enough for that table. When we left, she checked the train platform herself. I noticed. She noticed me noticing and rolled her eyes. That tiny, ordinary irritation felt more hopeful than any tearful apology. The medical program changed me in ways revenge never could. It put me in rooms where preparation mattered because patients were real, not because school reputations needed polishing. During clinical skills, if you forgot to verify a patient's name, no amount of charm corrected the error. If you assumed left when the chart said right, you could harm someone. If you relied on a friend to remember your sterile field, you failed the station. Competence became less about winning and more about not making your carelessness someone else's injury. I loved that. I loved the clean humility of checklists, the ritual of confirming identity, the way senior nurses corrected everyone equally and without interest in popularity. One afternoon, after I carefully verified a medication label twice, my supervisor said, "Good. Never let anyone rush you out of checking." I thought of Mary calling me dramatic, of North Marrow glowing on the wrong river, of the first life where I rushed so many checks for others that my own gate closed. I won't, I said. The supervisor smiled. People will try. I know. She looked at me then as if she heard more than the words, but she only nodded. Medicine, I began to understand, was not a place where my old wound disappeared. It was a place where the scar could become discipline if I kept it clean. Still, healing did not make me generous in the old way, and I stopped apologizing for that. When classmates asked for help, I offered boundaries before content. I can explain the concept for 20 minutes. I won't share my full notes. I'm not responsible for your submission. Some people disliked it. Most adapted. A few thanked me because clear limits made asking safer. Nadia became my closest friend in the program partly because she once texted, "Can you explain renal clearance? If not, no pressure, I'll go to office hours." No pressure. 3 ordinary syllables. I stared at them for a ridiculous length of time before answering yes. Friendship with her felt different. Lighter, less theatrical, more reciprocal. She brought coffee when I helped. I sent practice questions when she helped. Neither of us kept emotional receipts disguised as affection. When she booked accommodation for our first rural placement, she sent me the link and wrote, "I verified this against the hospital address, but can you sanity check?" That phrase made me laugh. Sanity checking was not servitude. It was 2 competent people making sure neither had missed a turn. I checked. It was correct. She thanked me and booked her own room. I slept well that night. Years later, when I tell people that the most important decision of my life was checking into a cheap hotel by myself, they laugh because they think I am making a joke about independence. I let them laugh. They do not need the whole story. They do not need to know about North Marrow, Marrow Gate, the wrong hostel lights reflected in a river, the phone calls I did not answer, the friend I loved and could not keep, the life where I missed the gate, the years that vanished, the death under clinic fluorescence, the impossible mercy of waking before the mistake. They only need the lesson, and even that I give carefully now. Love is not a navigation system, friendship is not a boarding pass, and being reliable does not make you responsible for people who refuse to read. I still help. I still send reminders when asked respectfully. I still share public links. But I do not carry passports that are not mine. I do not book rooms for people who mock the address. I do not abandon the correct city to prove I care about someone lost in the wrong one. On the morning my medical program began, I arrived early, checked the building name twice, and stood outside the lecture hall with my own coffee, my own bag, my own future. My phone buzzed with a message from Miri, sent from Marrow Gate, a year late and right on time. I passed the sitting. I checked in alone. I understand now. I looked at the message for a long moment, then smiled into the bright hospital corridor. Congratulations, I wrote. You found the right city. Then I walked into class before anyone could ask me for directions.